The first person who noticed the boy was bus driver Mike. Not because the boy did anything unusual, quite the opposite. It was because he was always there, every day, without fail. At exactly 3:47 p.m., school ended at 3:30. The buses arrived at 3:40. By 3:50, most children were already gone. Parents picked them up. School buses took them home. Older kids walked away in groups. Within minutes, the sidewalk would be empty. Except for one boy. Every single day. The same bench, the same bus stop, the same backpack resting beside him. Waiting. At first, Mike didn't think much about it. Bus drivers see thousands of faces every year. Most become a blur. But routines stand out. And the boy had a routine. A very strange one. He never looked at his phone. Never played games. Never wore headphones. Most kids his age couldn't sit still for 3 minutes. This kid could sit for 3 hours. Sometimes longer. Just watching the road. As if expecting someone. One rainy afternoon, Mike finally asked. The bus had reached the last stop of the route. The streets were almost empty. The boy was still sitting there. Rain tapped softly against the bus windows. Mike opened the door. "You waiting for somebody, kid?" The boy looked up. His eyes were calm, older than a child's eyes should be. For a moment, he seemed surprised anyone had spoken to him. Then he nodded. "Yes," Mike smiled. "Running late." The boy glanced down the road. Maybe. The answer felt strange, but Mike didn't push. "Well," he pointed toward the darkening sky. "Looks like whoever it is should hurry." The boy looked toward the horizon, then quietly said, "I hope so." The answer stayed with Mike all evening. There was something about the way the kid said it. Not impatient, not annoyed, hopeful, as if waiting itself was important. The next day the boy was there again, and the next, and the next. Soon other people began noticing him. Mrs. Collins noticed him first. She owned the small bakery across the street. Every afternoon she closed at 6. Every afternoon the boy was still there. Rain, wind, cold. It didn't matter. The kid stayed, waiting. One Thursday she crossed the street, carrying a paper bag. Fresh cinnamon rolls, still warm. She offered one to the boy. He immediately shook his head. "No, thank you." Mrs. Collins laughed. "Most kids don't refuse free pastries." The boy smiled politely. "My grandmother says I shouldn't take things from strangers." Mrs. Collins liked him immediately. "Smart grandmother." The boy nodded. "She's smart." Then he looked back toward the road. The conversation was over. Not rude. Just finished. As though he had something more important to do. Wait. That was what bothered everyone. The waiting. Not for a day, not for a week, but for months. Summer slowly became autumn. Leaves gathered along the sidewalk. The afternoons grew colder. School resumed after break. New students arrived. Old students moved away. Life changed. The boy remained. By October, people had started making assumptions. Adults are good at that, especially when they don't know the truth. The most common theory was obvious. He must be waiting for his father. Mrs. Collins said it first. Mike agreed. Several parents agreed too. It fit. The boy's age, the sadness, the waiting, it all fit. And once people believe they understand a story, they stop looking for other explanations. One afternoon, a woman asked him directly, "Your dad working late again?" The boy blinked, clearly confused. Then he simply said, "No." The woman looked embarrassed. "Oh." She quickly changed the subject. But the answer spread. Now people were even more curious. If he wasn't waiting for his father, then who was he waiting for? Weeks passed. The mystery grew, and the boy kept returning every afternoon, every evening. The same bench, the same road, the same hope. Then one Friday something happened. Something small. Something almost nobody noticed. Except Mike, the bus driver. The boy pulled an old photograph from his backpack, looked at it for several minutes, then carefully placed it on the empty seat beside him, as if saving a spot for someone. Mike felt a chill run through him, because suddenly, for the first time, he wasn't sure the person the boy was waiting for was actually coming. And deep down, the boy might have known that too. By November, the boy had become part of the neighborhood, not officially. Nobody knew his name. Nobody knew where he lived. But everyone recognized him. The boy at the bus stop, the one who waited. Every afternoon followed the same pattern. School ended. Children disappeared. The street grew quiet. And the boy remained, watching the road, waiting. People started checking for him, without realizing it. Mrs. Collins looked through her bakery window. Mike glanced toward the bench whenever his route passed by. Even the crossing guard noticed. If the bench was empty, it felt strange, as though something was missing. One Tuesday afternoon, rain poured so heavily that water ran down the sidewalks like small rivers. The temperature dropped. The sky turned dark before 5 o'clock. Mike assumed the boy wouldn't be there. No child would sit outside in weather like that. Yet when his bus approached the stop, there he was, soaked, motionless, waiting. Mike parked the bus, opened the door, and walked across the street. The boy looked up. His jacket was drenched. Rainwater dripped from his hair. "Kid," Mike frowned. "You're going to catch pneumonia." The boy smiled politely. "My grandmother says that's not actually how pneumonia works." Mike laughed despite himself. "Your grandmother sounds smarter than me." "She probably is." The answer made Mike grin. The kid had a sense of humor. That surprised him. Most children who looked that lonely usually didn't. Mike handed him a spare umbrella from the bus. "Take this." The boy immediately shook his head. "No, thank you." "Why not?" "Because you'll need it tomorrow." Mike stared. The kid had clearly thought about that. Eventually, Mike sat beside him, rain drumming above them. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Mike pointed toward the photograph resting inside the boy's backpack. The corner was visible, old, worn, used often. "Family?" The boy glanced down, then carefully removed the photograph. For the first time, Mike got a good look at it. A man, smiling, standing beside a fishing boat, one arm wrapped around a young boy, the same boy, only younger, maybe 6 years old. Mike immediately understood, or at least he thought he did. Father and son. Of course. Everything suddenly made sense. "You miss him?" The boy studied the picture, then nodded. "Every day." Mike looked away, giving him privacy, because some answers deserved silence. The next afternoon, Mike told Mrs. Collins, not gossip, concern. The bakery owner listened carefully, then sighed. "Poor kid." Mike nodded. "I'd think he's waiting for his dad." Mrs. Collins looked through the window toward the bus stop. The bench was visible from her counter. The boy sat there now, exactly where he always sat. "Maybe," she said. "But if that's true—" Mike frowned. "What?" Mrs. Collins hesitated. "If he's still waiting after all these months." Her voice trailed off. Neither finished the thought, because neither wanted to. A few days later, someone finally learned the boy's name, by accident. A teacher arrived at the bakery after school. She ordered coffee, looked out the window, and immediately recognized him. "Oh," She smiled. That's Noah. Mrs. Collins nearly dropped the coffee pot. You know him? The teacher nodded. Of course. He attends Lincoln Elementary. Mrs. Collins leaned forward. What happened to his father? The teacher's expression changed. Confusion, then concern. What do you mean? Mrs. Collins exchanged a look with Mike, both suddenly realizing something. The teacher lowered her voice. I don't think anyone has seen his father in years. The room became very quiet. Years? Mike asked. The teacher nodded. At least 3. Mrs. Collins felt a chill, because that changed everything. 3 years. Not 3 weeks. Not 3 months. 3 years. The boy was 11, which meant nearly a third of his life. That night the story spread through the neighborhood. Not maliciously. People cared. That was the problem. Caring often creates theories, and theories create rumors. Soon everyone had one. Maybe the father abandoned the family. Maybe he was overseas. Maybe he was in prison. Maybe he had died. Each theory sounded believable. None were confirmed. Only one person knew the truth. Noah. And he wasn't talking. The following Monday, something happened that made the mystery even deeper. Mrs. Collins was locking up the bakery when she noticed Noah standing beside the bench. Not sitting, standing, staring down the road, more alert than usual, more hopeful, as if he expected something. Then, a blue pickup truck appeared, old, weathered, moving slowly down the street. Noah's eyes widened immediately. For one breathtaking second, pure excitement crossed his face, the kind of excitement children can't fake. He took a step forward. Then, another. Mrs. Collins held her breath, certain she was about to witness the end of the mystery. The truck came closer, closer, closer. Then it drove straight past him, without stopping. The boy froze. The excitement disappeared, instantly, like a light being switched off. For several seconds he simply stood there, watching the truck disappear. Then he quietly sat back down on the bench, pulled out the old photograph, and continued waiting. Mrs. Collins felt her heart break, because she had just seen something no child should have to experience. Hope and disappointment, only seconds apart. That night she couldn't stop thinking about it. Neither could Mike. Neither could the teacher. Because for the first time, they all realized something frightening. Noah wasn't just sitting at that bus stop out of habit. He genuinely believed someone might still come. And whatever promise he was holding on to, it was powerful enough to keep him waiting long after everyone else had given up. The first snow of the year arrived on a Wednesday. Not enough to cover the roads, just enough to dust the rooftops and turn the sidewalks white. By 3 o'clock, the town looked quieter than usual. Colder, still. At 3:47 p.m., Noah was sitting on the bench, exactly where he always sat. Snowflakes drifted around him. His backpack rested beside him. The old photograph sat in his hands, and once again, he watched the road, waiting. Across the street, Mrs. Collins watched from her bakery window. She had stopped pretending she wasn't concerned. The whole neighborhood had. A week earlier, Noah had been a mystery. Now he was becoming something else, someone people worried about. That afternoon, the school counselor arrived at the bakery. Her name was Sarah. She had worked at Lincoln Elementary for nearly 15 years. She knew every family, every struggle, every secret children tried to hide. Mrs. Collins poured her coffee. then nodded toward the window. Noah's out there again. Sarah looked, immediately, almost automatically, as if she had expected it. You've noticed him too. Mrs. Collins smiled sadly. Everyone has. Sarah stared at the boy for several moments, then quietly said, He's a good kid. The words carried weight, not because they were dramatic, because they were sincere. Mrs. Collins sat down across from her. What's his story? Sarah hesitated, the way professionals do when they're trying to respect privacy. But eventually she sighed. His grandmother is raising him? That part everyone already knew. The town wasn't large. Information traveled. What about his parents? Mrs. Collins asked gently. Sarah wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, looking down, thinking. His mother died when he was 6. The bakery suddenly felt quieter. Mrs. Collins lowered her eyes. Oh, Sarah nodded. Car accident. Neither woman spoke, because some tragedies never become easier to hear, no matter how many years pass. After a moment, Mrs. Collins asked the question everyone wanted answered. What about his father? Sarah looked toward the window, toward Noah, sitting alone in the snow. Then she slowly shook her head. I don't know. Mrs. Collins blinked. You don't know? No, Sarah answered honestly. Nobody seems to. That answer somehow felt even stranger. Because fathers don't simply disappear. Not completely. Not for years. At least they aren't supposed to. That evening, Mike couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. The next afternoon, he parked the bus earlier than usual. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Noah was already there, watching the road. As always, Mike walked over carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate, one for himself, one for Noah. The boy looked surprised. My grandmother says I shouldn't accept things from strangers. Mike laughed. I've known you 6 months. Noah considered that, then accepted the cup. Fair point. They sat together, watching cars pass, watching daylight slowly fade. For a while neither spoke. Then Mike asked, How old are you? 11. That's what I thought. Silence again. Comfortable this time. Eventually Mike nodded toward the photograph. You carry that everywhere. Noah looked down at it. His expression immediately softened. Yeah. Mike waited. Noah rarely volunteered information. Everyone knew that. Then, unexpectedly, the boy spoke. He took that picture the day before my birthday. Mike glanced at him. Surprised. Noah continued staring at the photo. I caught my first fish. A small smile appeared. It was tiny. Mike laughed. They usually are. Noah smiled too. For a moment he looked like any other child. Then the smile faded. He told me next year we'd catch a bigger one. The words hung in the cold air. Mike suddenly understood. The picture wasn't important because it showed the past. It showed a promise. And promises matter to children. Sometimes more than reality. Mike chose his next words carefully. Your father sounds like a good man. Noah didn't answer immediately. Instead he looked down the road. The same road he'd been watching for months. Then, he quietly said, I don't know. Mike frowned. What do you mean? Noah shrugged. I don't really remember. The answer hit harder than Mike expected, because suddenly he realized something. The boy wasn't holding on to memories. There weren't enough memories left. He was holding on to hope, a very different thing. The sun disappeared. Streetlights flickered on. The air grew colder. Eventually Mike stood. You should probably head home. Noah nodded, but didn't move. Instead he kept staring at the road. Then he asked something so quietly Mike almost missed it. Do adults always stop waiting? Mike froze. The question felt much bigger than an 11-year-old should have been asking. He sat back down. What do you mean? Noah looked toward the horizon. My grandmother says some things don't come back. A pause. She says waiting doesn't change that. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Noah finally looked at Mike. His eyes were filled with something that didn't belong in a child. Fear. What if she's right? Mike didn't know how to answer, because he wasn't sure. And children always know when adults are pretending. So instead, he told the truth. Boss, I don't know, kid. Noah nodded slowly, as if he appreciated the honesty. Then he looked back toward the road and whispered, Neither do I. That night, Mike drove home thinking about those words. What if she's right? For the first time, he began to suspect something nobody had considered. Maybe Noah wasn't waiting because he believed someone would come. Maybe he was waiting because he was terrified they wouldn't. And those are two very different reasons. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Noah's grandmother sat alone at her kitchen table, staring at a stack of old letters she had hidden for years, letters addressed to a little boy named Noah, letters she had never allowed him to read. And tomorrow, one of those letters was finally going to change everything. The letters were hidden inside an old wooden box, a box Noah had seen dozens of times, maybe hundreds. It sat on the highest shelf in his grandmother's bedroom closet, covered in dust, locked, ignored. At least that's what his grandmother thought. The truth was that Noah had always wondered about it. Children notice things adults overlook, especially when those things remain untouched for years. That Thursday evening after dinner, his grandmother climbed onto a chair and carefully lowered the box. For several minutes, she simply stared at it, not opening it, not touching the lock, just staring, as though opening it would change something, because it would. Her name was Evelyn. She was 72 years old, and for 3 years she had carried a secret she hated, a secret she believed was necessary, a secret she was no longer sure she could defend. The phone call from Sarah, the school counselor, had shaken her. He's still waiting. Those 3 words had hit harder than anything else, because Evelyn knew exactly who Noah was waiting for, and why. She also knew something Noah didn't, something the entire town didn't. His father hadn't abandoned him. The thought alone brought tears to her eyes, because she knew how many people believed it, how many times she had heard the whispers, "Poor kid." His father ran off. His father disappeared. His father left him. None of it was true, not even close. Evelyn slowly unlocked the box. The hinges creaked. Inside were dozens of envelopes, carefully stacked, carefully preserved, every single one addressed the same way, to Noah. Her hands trembled, because she knew what was inside. She had read every one, more than once, sometimes late at night, sometimes when she missed her son, so much she couldn't sleep. Her son, Noah's father, Daniel. Evelyn picked up the oldest envelope. The date written in the corner was 3 years old, exactly 3 years. The same year Daniel disappeared. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She quickly wiped her eyes. "Come in." The bedroom door opened. Noah stood there. "Grandma?" Evelyn immediately closed the box, instinctively, almost guiltily. Noah noticed. Of course he did. Children notice everything. "What's that?" For a moment Evelyn considered lying. She had done it before, many times. But she looked at Noah, really looked at him. And suddenly she saw something she hadn't noticed before. He looked tired, not physically, emotionally, the kind of tiredness that comes from carrying hope for too long. Evelyn's heart broke because she realized something. Waiting wasn't protecting him anymore. Waiting was hurting him. She slowly opened the box again. Noah stared. The envelopes, the handwriting, the name, his name. The room suddenly felt smaller. What are those? Evelyn swallowed, then answered honestly. For the first time in years, they're from your father. Everything stopped. Noah didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe. For several seconds he simply stared. Then he whispered, "My dad?" Evelyn nodded. The boy looked as though the world had tilted beneath him. Because for years nobody talked about Daniel. Not really. People changed subjects, avoided questions, offered vague answers. And now, suddenly, there were letters, dozens of them. Noah stepped closer, slowly, almost afraid they might disappear. When? His voice sounded very small. When did he write them? Evelyn looked down. Over the last 3 years. Noah's eyes widened. 3 years. 3 years. The exact amount of time he'd been waiting. The exact amount of time everyone thought his father was gone. The exact amount of time those letters had been sitting in a box, unopened, unread. Why? The question escaped before he could stop it. Why didn't you tell me? Evelyn closed her eyes, because she had asked herself the same question 1,000 times, every day, for 3 years. Finally, she whispered, "Because I thought I was protecting you." Noah stared. Protecting me from what? The answer took a long time to come, because some truths are painful to say aloud, especially when they involve your own child. Eventually, Evelyn sat down on the edge of the bed and spoke the words she had avoided for years. Your father is alive. Noah felt his heart leap, instantly, violently, alive, alive, alive. Every fear vanished, every doubt vanished, every terrible possibility vanished. For one perfect second. Then Evelyn continued, "He's in prison." The world crashed back down. Silence filled the room. Heavy, stunned, unbelievable. Noah stared at her, unable to process what he'd heard. His father wasn't dead, wasn't missing, wasn't gone. He was alive. And somehow that made everything more confusing. Not less. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Daniel made mistakes. She looked away, ashamed, heartbroken. He made very serious mistakes. Noah said nothing. After your mother died, her voice trembled. He stopped being himself. The room remained silent. Then she reached into the box, picked up the top envelope, and handed it to Noah. The boy stared at it, his name written across the front, in his father's handwriting. The handwriting from the photograph, the birthday cards, the fishing trip. His hands began shaking. Can I read it? Evelyn nodded, slowly. Yes. Noah carefully opened the envelope. The paper inside had yellowed slightly with age. At the very top were 4 simple words. Dear Noah, I hope you're still waiting for me. And suddenly, for the first time in 3 years, Noah understood why he had never been able to stop. Noah read the first letter 3 times that night, then a 4th, then a 5th. Not because he didn't understand the words, because he couldn't believe they were real. For 3 years, he had imagined 100 different explanations. Maybe his father was dead. Maybe he had forgotten him. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he had chosen a different life. Children fill silence with stories. It's how they survive unanswered questions. But now, for the first time, he had actual answers. or at least the beginning of them. The letter was short, only 2 pages. Daniel wrote about ordinary things: the prison library, the weather, a sparrow that landed outside his window every morning, the terrible coffee, the endless waiting. But one sentence stayed with Noah. "I know I don't deserve your patience, but I hope one day you'll let me earn it." Noah stared at those words long after midnight, because they didn't sound like excuses, they sounded like regret. And there was a difference. The next afternoon, he returned to the bus stop, as always. But this time something had changed. For the first time, he knew where his father was. The waiting no longer felt endless. It felt connected. Across the street, Mrs. Collins noticed immediately. The boy was smiling. Not constantly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough that she noticed. Enough that Mike noticed too. When Mike stopped beside the bench, he frowned. Something good happen? Noah hesitated, then surprised himself. "Maybe." Mike laughed. "That's exactly what you said the first day I met you." Noah smiled. "I remember." For a moment, Mike saw what the boy might have looked like before all this. Before the loneliness, before the waiting, before the questions. Just a kid. And somehow that felt important. Over the next few weeks, Noah read more letters. One every evening. Sometimes 2. Never more. He wanted them to last. Each envelope revealed another piece of Daniel. The father, the son, the broken man, the man trying desperately to rebuild himself. Some letters were hopeful. Some were funny. One included a terrible hand-drawn fish that made Noah laugh so hard he nearly fell off his chair. Another described the first fishing trip they'd ever taken together. Another apologized. Not generally, not vaguely, specifically. For missed birthdays, for broken promises, for disappearing when Noah needed him most. Those were the hardest to read, because Noah wanted to be angry. Sometimes he was, but anger becomes complicated when someone admits they were wrong, especially when they keep admitting it over hundreds of pages. One evening, Noah found a question in one of the letters. "Do you still draw spaceships? You used to draw them on every piece of paper you could find." Noah smiled, because he still did. In fact, there was one folded inside his backpack right now. The realization hit him unexpectedly. His father remembered things, small things, things nobody else remembered. And somehow that mattered. A lot. Meanwhile, the town slowly learned the truth. Not all at once. Not through gossip. Through Noah. One conversation at a time. Mrs. Collins learned first. Then Mike. Then Sarah. The reaction surprised Noah. Nobody defended what Daniel had done. Nobody excused it. But nobody spoke about him the way they used to either. Because now, he wasn't just a rumor or a mystery. He was a person, a flawed one, a broken one, but still a person. One snowy afternoon, Noah sat in the bakery with Mrs. Collins after school. She handed him a cinnamon roll. This time he accepted. Progress. As they watched snow fall outside, she finally asked, "Are you angry with him?" Noah looked out the window, thinking, for a long time. Then he answered honestly, "Sometimes." Mrs. Collins nodded. "That's fair." Noah tore off a small piece of pastry, then quietly added, "But I think he's angry with himself more than I am." The bakery owner didn't know what to say, because that sounded far older than 11. Far wiser, too. The weeks passed. Winter deepened. The stack of unread letters slowly shrank. 30 became 20. 20 became 10. And with each letter, Noah found himself looking forward to something. Not the waiting, not the bus stop, the future. For the first time in years. Then one February evening, he opened an envelope that felt different. The paper was newer, the handwriting slightly shakier. Daniel's opening sentence immediately made Noah sit upright. "If you're reading this, I have news." Noah's pulse quickened. He continued reading, and halfway down the page, everything changed. Because after 3 years, after hundreds of letters, after thousands of hours of waiting, Daniel had written 5 words Noah never expected to see. "I'll be coming home soon." Noah stopped breathing. He read the sentence again, and again, and again. Then he ran downstairs so fast he nearly tripped. "Grandma!" Evelyn looked up from the kitchen table. Startled, Noah burst into the room, holding the letter, his face glowing, his hands shaking. "He's coming home." For a moment, Evelyn didn't move, didn't speak, because she already knew what the next letter contained. And suddenly she wasn't sure whether to smile or cry, because Daniel was coming home. But neither Noah nor the rest of the town knew the truth. Coming home would be the easy part. The difficult part would be what happened after. The next morning, Noah started counting. Not days, hours. There were 83 days until Daniel's release, according to the letter. 83. To most people that sounded like a long time. To Noah, it felt shorter than the 3 years he'd already waited. For the first time, the future had a date attached to it, a finish line, a destination, a moment he could point to and say, "That's when my dad comes home." The bus stop changed after that. Not physically. The bench was still old. The road was still the same. The traffic lights still blinked every evening. But Noah changed. People noticed immediately. He smiled more, talked more, even laughed occasionally. Mrs. Collins loved that part. One afternoon, she watched him help an elderly customer carry groceries. The customer thanked him. Noah shrugged, then said, "My dad always said, helping people costs nothing." Mrs. Collins stood frozen behind the bakery window. Because Noah had learned that lesson from a man he hadn't seen in years, and somehow he still carried it. Meanwhile, Daniel's letters continued arriving, every 2 weeks, like clockwork. Noah treasured each one. Some described classes Daniel was taking. Some described books he was reading. Some described plans, lots of plans, fishing trips, camping trips, road trips, birthday parties, the kinds of promises fathers make when they're desperate to rebuild lost time. Noah loved reading them. Evelyn hated reading them, not because she doubted Daniel's sincerity, because she knew something Noah didn't. And every new promise made the secret heavier, harder to carry. One evening she sat alone at the kitchen table, reading a recent letter, the same one she'd already read 4 times. A sentence near the end caught her eye. Again. "Tell Noah I'll make up for everything." Evelyn closed her eyes. Because some things couldn't be made up, not completely, and Daniel knew that, whether he admitted it or not. The phone rang. It was Daniel. The weekly call. Evelyn answered. For several moments neither spoke. Then Daniel asked the question he always asked first. "How's Noah?" Evelyn smiled sadly. Excited. Silence. Then she heard him exhale. Long, slow, heavy. Good. But he didn't sound good. Not even close. For months, Evelyn had noticed it. The hesitation, the exhaustion, the fear hidden beneath his optimism. Finally, she asked, "Have you told him yet?" The silence that followed lasted too long. Much too long. And that silence answered everything. "No." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Daniel, I know. His voice cracked. For the first time. I know. But knowing and doing are different things, especially when you're terrified. Terrified of losing the one thing you've spent years trying to regain. His son. Evelyn stared at the kitchen wall. He's building dreams around this. Another silence. Then Daniel whispered, I know. And somehow those two words sounded like heartbreak, because Daniel wasn't avoiding the truth. Out of selfishness, he was avoiding it, because he couldn't bear what it might cost. The call ended 20 minutes later. Neither felt better afterward. Months passed. The countdown continued. 40 days, 30, 20. The entire town became invested, not because they loved drama, because they loved Noah. Mike talked about it constantly. Mrs. Collins baked a cake. Sarah bought a welcome home card. Even people who barely knew Daniel hoped things would work out. Everybody wanted a happy ending, especially Noah. One afternoon, while waiting at the bus stop, Mike sat beside him. You nervous? Noah smiled. A little. Mike nodded. That's normal. Noah stared down the road, then quietly admitted something. I don't know what he'll be like. Mike looked at him. Neither did he. 3 years changes people. Prison changes people. Loss changes people. Life changes people. The father Noah remembered from a photograph might not be the same man who stepped off that bus, and both of them knew it. Then Noah reached into his backpack, pulled out the photograph, the same photograph, the one he'd carried for years. The edges were worn now, soft from handling. He looked at it for a moment, then smiled. That's okay. Mike frowned. What is? Noah carefully returned the picture to his bag. He doesn't have to be the same. Mike stared at him. The boy continued watching the road. He just has to come home. For a moment, Mike couldn't speak, because there it was, the entire story, the entire weight, the entire hope. Not perfection, not forgiveness, not even answers, just home. A week later, the final letter arrived, the last one before release. Noah carried it to the bus stop. He wanted to read it there, the place where everything had started. The bench was empty. The afternoon was quiet. The sky was turning orange. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, shorter than usual, much shorter. And by the second paragraph, Noah's smile disappeared. His heart began to pound, because for the first time in 3 years, Daniel wasn't writing about the future. He was writing about fear, real fear. And near the bottom of the page was a sentence Noah read 3 times before he understood it. There is something important I haven't told you. The wind moved softly through the trees. Cars passed. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. But Noah heard none of it, because suddenly, the future he'd imagined for months no longer looked certain. And for the first time since the letters began, he was afraid to keep reading. Noah stared at the final letter for nearly 10 minutes before reading the rest. The words blurred together at first, not because the handwriting was unclear, because his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The letter began differently than all the others. No jokes, no stories, no fishing memories, no plans, only honesty. The kind people save for when they run out of places to hide. Dear Noah, if you're reading this, I'll be home very soon. And before that happens, I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. Noah swallowed. His stomach tightened. The next sentence hit him immediately. I'm sick. Everything after that seemed to slow down. The sounds of the street faded. The passing cars disappeared. The world narrowed to paper and ink. I found out 18 months ago. At first I thought treatment would work. Then I thought I had more time. Then I kept waiting for a better moment to tell you. Noah kept reading. There wasn't a better moment. I was afraid, not of dying, of disappointing you again. The paper trembled in his hands. The doctors don't know exactly how much time I have. Maybe years, maybe less. But I promised myself I wouldn't lie to you anymore. Noah stopped reading, closed his eyes, opened them again, read the paragraph a second time, then a third, because it felt impossible. For 3 years he had waited for his father to come home. Now, just as that moment was arriving, another clock had started, on nobody could see. At the bottom of the page, Daniel had written, "If you're angry, I'll understand. If you're disappointed, I'll understand. But if you'll let me, I'd still like to come home." Noah folded the letter, carefully, slowly. Then he cried, for the first time since he was a little boy. Not because his father had lied, not because of prison, not because of the years they'd lost, because life was being unfair again. And he was tired of it. Across the street, Mrs. Collins saw him. The moment she stepped outside, she knew something was wrong. Noah never cried, not publicly. By the time she reached the bench, he had already wiped his eyes, but the letter remained clenched in his hand. She sat beside him, said nothing. After a minute, Noah handed her the paper. She read it, then covered her mouth. "Oh, Noah." The boy stared down the road. The same bench, the same waiting. Only now it felt different. What if I lose him again? The question broke her heart, because it was the question of an 11-year-old and the question of a grown man. At the same time, Mrs. Collins looked toward the horizon, then quietly answered, "You will." Noah looked at her. She didn't look away. Everyone loses the people they'd love eventually. The boy lowered his eyes. But that's not the important part. A pause. The important part is what happens before that. For a long time neither spoke. Then Noah folded the letter, put it back inside the envelope, and whispered, "Then I don't want to waste any more time." 3 days later, Daniel came home. The whole town seemed to know. Mike adjusted his route just to pass near the station. Mrs. Collins closed the bakery early. Sarah left work an hour ahead of schedule. Nobody announced it. Nobody organized it. People simply showed up. Because for months they had watched a little boy wait, and now they wanted to see the ending. The bus station was small. Only 2 benches, 1 ticket counter, a faded clock above the entrance. Noah stood beside Evelyn, holding the photograph, holding the final letter, holding his breath. The bus arrived at 4:12 p.m. The doors opened. Passengers stepped off one by one. An elderly couple, a student, a man carrying 2 suitcases. Then another man appeared, thin, much thinner than the photograph, older, more tired. His hair contained more gray than Noah expected. But Noah recognized him instantly. So did Daniel. For 1 second they simply stared at each other. 3 years, hundreds of letters, thousands of hours, compressed into a single moment. Daniel took 1 step forward, then stopped, as if afraid, as if he wasn't sure he had earned the right to come closer. His voice cracked. "Noah." The boy ran, not walked, not hesitated, ran, straight across the station, straight into his father's arms. And for the first time in 3 years, he stopped waiting. People cried openly. Even Mike, though he'd deny it later, especially Evelyn, because she had spent years fearing this moment might never happen. And now, it was finally real. Daniel held his son tightly. Neither wanted to let go. Eventually, Noah pulled back, looked up, and smiled through tears. "I saved your seat." Daniel frowned. "What?" Noah held up the photograph. "The seat beside me." His voice trembled. "At the bus stop." Daniel understood immediately. And suddenly he was crying too, because somewhere in the town, beside an old road, sat a bench that had carried 3 years of hope. And somehow, that hope had been enough. That evening, after everyone left, Noah and Daniel sat together on the bus stop bench, just the two of them. The sky glowed orange, then pink, then purple, exactly as it had 1,000 evenings before. Daniel looked down the road. "You really came here every day?" Noah nodded. "Almost." Daniel laughed softly. "Why?" The boy thought about it, really thought, then answered, "Because you asked me to." Daniel looked confused. Noah reached into his backpack, pulled out the very first letter, folded, worn, loved, then pointed to one sentence, the sentence that had changed everything. "I hope you're still waiting for me." Daniel stared at it, unable to speak, because he had written those words in a prison cell, late at night, feeling broken, feeling hopeless, never imagining what they would mean. A tear rolled down his cheek. "I'm sorry it took so long." Noah smiled. It was worth it. The two of them sat quietly as the sun disappeared. And for the first time in years, the bench was no longer a place of waiting. It was a place of arrival. The end.